President Biden scheduled to meet with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Geneva next month. The summit comes amid stark differences between the countries, but after the U.S. recently waived sanctions against Russia's valuable Nord Stream 2 pipeline to Germany. Let's bring in tonight's Bream team to debate. Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall and host of the Jason in the House podcast, Jason Chaffetz. Welcome to you both. We're going to try to cover a lot of ground, so I'll get right to it. Rick Grinnell, former acting director of DNI, he says this: "Dear Lord, D.C. reporters are such phonies. Biden should be widely criticized for caving on NS2 and helping Putin win his prize pipeline." Maggie, meaning Maggie Haberman at the New York Times, spent 4 years pretending that Trump was doing Putin's work, and yet he stopped the pipeline from coming online. Jason, first comment to you.
Ambassador Grinnell is absolutely right. It is stunning how the policy of appeasement from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is roll over, do everything that Russia wants, appease them, give them their pipeline. Remember, they just had a Russian attack on a pipeline in the United States of America, and then they go ahead and approve a pipeline in Russia. There was no reason to do it. Why? Why do this, Mr. President? What did we, the United States of America, get for that? Nothing.
Leslie, people are pointing to the fact, at least the way that the media covered the Putin-Trump relationship. And yeah, listen, the Biden administration says we should be able to sit with the table and have a conversation with them. That's what Trump said as well. And yet nobody is criticizing this meeting after waiving those, sanctions.
I think it depends who you're watching, who you're listening to, or who you're reading blogs of. Certainly the relationship between President Biden and former President Trump and Vladimir Putin are very different. Donald Trump looked at Putin more in a friendly manner as a strong ally and potential ally, wanted to build that relationship. I mean, Joe Biden has called the guy a murderer. And even though he knows he has to sit down and we have to have some diplomacy with countries like Russia, he also knows, I'll tell you what he's getting for it, Jason. Rick Grinnell is a friend of mine, and he's former ambassador to Germany. And actually, this benefits Germany more than it benefits Russia. The United States is not in a position and does not want to get into an international transatlantic tiff with Germany, which is what would happen if the president didn't do what he did at this very moment in time. And that's why I think he's not being criticized as much, because he's preserving one of our great relationships with Germany. And this is not, just a win-win for Russia. It's a very big win for Germany, one of our strongest allies.
But I think we'd all admit it is a win for Russia. And I shouldn't say that no one is criticizing the meeting, because there are people raising questions, but not most of the mainstream media. Okay, on to this infrastructure idea. Republicans going back and forth with Democrats, with the White House, about getting this infrastructure bill together, counter and counterpoint options and offerings. Senator Wicker, who's a Republican out of Mississippi, says this: "We're going to hit a figure very close to what the president said he would accept. It will end up being the most substantial infrastructure bill ever enacted by the federal government. And if the president gets to make the decision, he will accept this." Jason, sounding very much like he's sort of challenging who's actually making the decisions. Is the president the one?
Look, Senator Wicker does know what he's talking about, and so that's the most optimistic that I've heard a Republican U.S. Senator be. But we act when we have these discussions about infrastructure as if we don't spend any other money on infrastructure, and yet we have trillions and trillions of dollars going out the door. Still, with Obama and Biden had a chance at infrastructure, they spent less than 5% of the $787 billion in stimulus, and there are those of us that are concerned that this is really just a Trojan horse to do a lot of other things. That's really not about roads, bridges, and infrastructure. Very little amount of money is actually dedicated to that compared to all the other garbage that's going to go into it.
So a couple of things there, Leslie. Republicans are pointing to the hundreds of billions of dollars that have not been fully spent from these relief, efforts, and said, why don't we use that? It's sitting there, and use that towards this, and we can get closer on the overall number. But what about this suggestion that it isn't President Biden who's actually making the final decision on this deal?
That's malarkey, as our president would say. And look, Jason, you know I love you, but I don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican that's been in the White House. Infrastructure, you know, you're a former member of Congress, has been kicked down the road by both Democrats and Republicans for years. And this is an opportunity for both Democrats and Republicans to work together, and certainly for President Biden to have a win on this, because you know what? Infrastructure is one of the areas where you have bipartisan agreement. And quite frankly, if you're saying, hey, you can't work in a bipartisan manner, you can't come to the table saying we're going to slash $600 billion, which is what Republicans are proposing. And you can't just say we're going to overlook electrical grid when you see what happened in Texas, or water pipelines when we see what happened in Flint, and certainly broadband, which is necessary in light of the pandemic and how many people have had to work from, or children have had to be schooled from home, and we don't know what's ahead of us. The list goes on. But at the end of the day, everyone wins from this, because infrastructure is a job creator, and that is something both Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate want to take home to their constituents.
We can't even get the two sides to agree on what infrastructure means. So let's start there and see if we can make some progress. Leslie and Jason, thank you both very much.
Thank you.